Welcome back to Proxammer, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about one of the armies in 40k, and that is now Astra Millitarum, aka the Imperial Guard. So I actually used to be a pretty big Guard player. I loved playing them. They were my first ever army. I loved the models, and the models are still the same after all these years since I was a kid. So, they actually got a pretty big buff, and one part of me is really happy that they got a buff because they needed it. They weren't a really good faction in competitive play because, to be honest with you, they just didn't do enough damage. And their tanks weren't really the best because, there's a lot of line of sight blocking stuff with obscuring terrain now in competitive play, and they just didn't really see a lot of play in general. But they got a big buff, and I actually think that IG have always been a little bit of an issue for Eldar, and the reason why is because they're very affordable. They're very cheap. They trade really well into very squishy but expensive units. So, and even now, people are going to go mass infantry now because last guns on 6s to hit, they auto wound, which basically means that you're going to be getting a lot more value out of your cheapest soldiers. So your very basic infantry squad, and even conscripts, by the way, are now valuable because conscripts on 6s, if I'm not mistaken, still, on 6s to hit, get auto wounds. So they trade very well into Eldar. Their tanks are pretty tough to the point, most of them anyway, the Lehman Russ variants anyway, are tough enough that require fire dragons or really dedicated anti-tank weaponry to deal with them. They're toughness 8, 2+ armor, multiple wounds. I believe they have 15 wounds, if I'm not mistaken. So very hard to take down for most weapons. Eldar missile launchers aren't going to be able to do it. A couple of Bright Lances aren't going to really be able to do that well against them. And now they have tons of indirect fire, and they ignore the penalties to indirect fire, unlike other factions. So, and that's pretty awesome. Now, the other thing is they get free special and heavy weapons for infantry as well. So that means every infantry squad is going to get a free plasma gun, free last cannon, and that just boosts their effectiveness tenfold because, first of all, Guard, they don't hit that well, but they don't hit that badly either. They hit on 4+. It's not that bad. So free special and heavy weapons, that's going to be really effective. Now, the Eldar do have a lot of ways of dealing with this. We have quite a few units, actually, that are good at dealing with hordes. We have Swooping Hawks, which basically have a large volume of fire. They're basically dedicated anti-infantry. You could have a squad of 5, pretty much kill a squad of 10 Imperial Guardmen pretty easily with special rules and the buffs that they'll obviously have. And they have Skyleap, and this is important because typically, once Swooping Hawks shoot, they're very vulnerable to return fire. So they may kill a squad of guardsmen, but then they're going to get killed themselves. So Skyleap allows them to remove themselves from the battlefield, put them anywhere in a safe spot where Imperial Guard, even if they move, they're 6 inches, they won't be able to catch them. Warp Spiders are also very good because they have blast weapons and sudden assault, which means they can go in and just, from turn 1, obliterate enemy infantry. So a squad of 5 Warp Spiders can basically do the same thing, kill a squad of Imperial Guardsmen, 1 turn. And then they have an Exarch power, which gives them kind of a pseudo Skyleap, so to speak. And they have abilities to get away from the enemy. Not quite enough to get away totally, but if you use terrain to your advantage, you might be able to do that anyway. Dire Avengers are also very good. They have a large volume of fire. Warwalkers with scatter lasers are pretty good as well because they're a cheap option. If you have a couple of Warwalkers with scatter lasers, they can do a lot of damage as well. Quick thing on Warwalkers, though. Be careful because, I didn't know this actually, but they don't have battle focus. I assume they did because in previous, I guess in 6th edition they had that, but they don't have that anymore. So they got rid of that. I didn't even notice. So they don't have that, so be careful. Fire and Fade can be used. but its command cost is quite high. So before you use it, make sure that it's actually needed. And lastly, fire dragons are really good at melting Leman Russ tanks. So Falcons, dropping fire dragons off, really good, but you also want to be careful because, you know, that's a big investment. That's a Falcon and a fire dragon probably going to be lost if you get within 6 inches. So you have to make sure that you're coordinated in your attack, and you want to make it as hard as possible for them to retaliate. So even though fire dragons might get lost after this, you don't want to make it easy for them to just kill them. You know, you don't want to give them a freebie. Same thing with the Falcon. You know, if you have any way of, you know, putting the Falcon behind terrain when you drop them off, or cleverly positioning in it so that, you know, a lot of their last cannons will be out of line of sight, then that's ideal. If not, then you're going to probably have to take the sacrifice. So some quick tips for facing Imperial Guard. Make sure to stay beyond their last gun range. Force them to move. Imperial Guard hate to move out of their positions. Force them to move using battle focus to move out of range so that they can't really retaliate as well. Also, don't give them an easy target. Don't just stand in front of them. Don't line up your army in front of them and attack, because then you're going to be in big trouble. They're going to easily just pick you off one by one. Stay in cover. Stay behind obscuring terrain or within cover so that you're negating some of their ballistic skill, or at the very most, you know, blocking their line of sight completely. Or maybe even getting +1 to your armor. Whatever it is helps to protect yourself in these situations. Make it harder for them to kill you and see you. Also, move your army together in a compact formation. So the reason this is because this will deny a large part of their army the ability to shoot at you. Because remember, Guard are going to be spammy. Guard take up a lot of space on the board. They're going to need the full deployment zone to be able to be effective. So they're not going to be able to compact themselves that well. And you're going to be able to use this to your advantage to concentrate your fire in one area at a time. And did not also, at the same time, deny their armies the ability to shoot you. Because most of their forces, probably about half their forces, are going to be on the other side of the board. So definitely use that to your advantage when you're facing Guard. Move your guys compact. You're an elite army. You're a small elite army. Use that to your advantage. Kill entire sections of their force at once, and then that way you don't have to deal with a lot of, or at the very least, the vast majority of their retaliation. So, in conclusion, you know, Imperial Guard is going to be a lot more powerful on the tabletop, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be seeing them more in tournaments just because of the fact that they got buffed so much. But a lot of their strength is going to rely heavily on infantry spam. And we have a lot of answers to infantry spam, not only in the way we play, but our units as well, because we're highly mobile. We have a lot of highly mobile units. And in general, we have a lot of stratagems and tactics to redeploy and mess with Imperial Guard players. So the only outlier that I can see being really kind of devastating to us is indirect fire weapons, which Guard can actually bring a lot of. The thing that comes to mind for me is the Wyvern. And if any of you know what the Wyvern is, a pretty nasty tank. Now, I haven't seen the newest rules for the Wyvern, but I can tell you this. It was nasty when I remembered it about, you know, the last Imperial Guard Codex. I don't know if it got a nerf since then. I'm going to have to double check that. But the Wyvern is insane. People can field a lot of those too because they're not that expensive. And they're really good at taking out Eldar. You know, they do a lot of shots and they don't negate much armor, but they ignore line of sight. And because Guard now ignore the penalties to indirect fire, they're going to be even more cost effective. So watch out for those. If you can see those, take them out first. You know, use your Cloud Strike ability with your Fire Dragons to get in there. They're very weak tanks once you start shooting at them, and they'll go down very easily. But in the meantime, they do a lot of damage. All right, everybody. I hope that helped. You know, I've been an Imperial Guard player for years. I know exactly what they're weak against, unfortunately. And I've had friends that I've played against with my Eldar as Imperial Guard. In fact, I played against a guy who always played massed infantry. And let me tell you, these strategies work. Concentrate your army. Make sure to only take out a certain section of the army at a time. Concentrate your fire, and you'll be fine. All right, everybody. See you next time. Have a great one, and hope you guys see you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.